Good morning and welcome to the West Committee Room for the Standing Policy Committee on Community Services. I'm Councillor Evan Duncan, chairperson for this committee. I'm joined this morning by Councillors Eadie and Santos. We're also joined by members of the public service, our senior manager of clerks, Ms. McMillan is here today. I will start with our land and water acknowledgement. I'd like to acknowledge that we are on Treaty 1 territories, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Innu, and Dakota peoples, and the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. If I could have a motion for the last minute's meeting.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Moved by Councillor Santos. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that is carried. We do have delegations this morning. I will have the clerk introduce.
Our first delegation is Councillor Gilroy Daniel McIntyre Ward to be heard with respect to naturalization of city boulevards with pollinator-friendly plant species, Report 7.
Good morning, councillors.
Good morning, Councillor. How are you?
Happy Friday.
Thank you very much.
Pretty good. Well, I'm here to ask that you support my motion on looking at a pilot project around our city boulevards in terms of naturalization. Many cities have actually started to move away from grass boulevards and introducing more natural plants to the landscape. There's a lot of benefits in terms of cost reducing for the city, so we wouldn't have to go out and mow. That's a big cost savings, and it also actually adds benefits for our economy. When you add pollinating plants, it really benefits the overall economy, because we are in Manitoba, especially we produce food. Right? That's one of our largest producers that we do. And we have a lot of community gardens for food security. So when we create these kind of natural landscapes, we're adding pollinators to the mix, which is really a positive aspect for our environment. And in fact, in some cities in my research, Minneapolis was actually paying residents to change their lawns into wildflower gardens and the natural landscapes, just in order to bring their bees back up, right? So it's a huge issue for people that do for food security, to make sure that we have pollinators. And it also helps us for climate change, for some of our climate change goals, because we do want to reduce our greenhouse gases. And one way to do is actually add more vegetation, more plants to the mix, helps us reduce our greenhouse gases. And also by not having to mow, you're reducing our greenhouse gases as well. Another benefit is really just utilizing some of the spaces that we have where people are not mowing already. And that's maybe something that I'm asking you to look at today. Is in my ward, I actually have areas, and probably Councillor Eadie as well. We do have areas where people just aren't mowing. So bylaw enforcement has to go out, and then we have to actually end up mowing. So those could be actually a great areas where we can look at adding these to. So we would reduce some of our costs around bylaws and lawn mowing. And another thing that we could kind of look at is how does it help the local residents in and around there by having those actual native plants added to the landscape. And one thing that I did want to note, I was talking to a reporter earlier, and we got to be mindful of our reconciliation efforts. And a lot of the native plants are used in terms of medicine for our indigenous population. So there could be ways that we can also incorporate some of our reconciliation efforts. Bringing up our bee population is really important, as well as providing those ecosystems that we know will help benefit our overall environment. So I think that there's some cost savings. I do want to acknowledge that you can't just, I think there has been some of these tried. You can't just plant and ignore it. Like, there is going to be some work to these naturalized environments, but I think that overall the cost benefit analysis, it would outweigh any kind of the negative things. I think the thing that I found in doing my research, the one thing is overcoming is the political will, because sometimes they don't look like that manicured lawn that everyone is supposed to see. So we kind of need to educate people, place signs so they understand what's going on, and be kind of leaders in showing how this could be a benefit to our rural environment. Now, looking at the cost, because I know that that's going to be something that you're concerned about. I'm on the Water and Waste Committee, and through our combined sewer overflows, there could be, at the meeting, I was raising questions about maybe there could be a correlation of this work done if it's done in our combined sewer overflow areas. They do have some money for this type of stuff because they do want to try to control the water flow, right? And having plants that soak up the water instead of it going into our drains and stuff is a big benefit for our sewer systems. So there could be potentially some connection between different departments here. It is kind of it is a complex complex ones where it's cross department. I don't know what is up with me, but so you do have a naturalist within, I think, your department who would be probably the lead on this. We do some of this work. We have Omans Creek. We do have other areas in the city that are naturalized. So it's not like it hasn't been done before. And I think there has been some work done on boulevards. Some may be successful and some maybe not. So there might be some lessons learned from those. But I do hope that you consider looking at this. Of course, I would love it in my neck of the woods, just because I think because of the reasons I mentioned, I already have places where people are not mowing. It could be a cost, reducing costs for the city there. But I also want to make sure that it's a successful program. So if wherever the naturalist feels it would be a good fit, I would be welcoming that. As long, and maybe looking at where our combined sewer overflows are, so maybe we can get a little bit of funding for that. But that's what I have, and open to any questions.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gilroy. Councillor Santos.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair, to the speaker. I am just going to put it on the record that I'm very supportive of this. I do, but like you had mentioned, there are some challenges, and my ward faces some challenges with respect to overgrown weeds that actually grow in naturalized areas. So there should be some lessons learned. I will be asking the administration some questions with respect to the challenges that my ward has faced with naturalized areas. But I guess kind of moving forward, so are you looking for maybe how many years? I don't think 1 year is long enough. I think we need to do this over a couple of years of a pilot project. Would you be supportive of that?
Yeah, it has to be in order for it to be successful, I think it needs about 2 to 5 years for you to really get that feedback. Some of the plants do take a while to germinate and like to really do what it's supposed to do, especially for also looking at stormwater retention. So yeah, you would need a few years for this to.
Because I took it upon myself last year. If you're aware, I took it upon myself last year to install or plant naturalized or pollinator plants.
Okay.
So it came back this year, but it's not as fulsome as I'd like it to be, and it still needs to kind of obviously pollinate, and the seeds need to kind of go a little bit further. But so far, it looks great. It does need more time, right, to ensure that it is successful. That's why I asked that question. So
Yeah.
Are you aware?
Yeah, and I am realizing certain areas they might want certain things, like for our natural environments, our boulevards, they might want clover rather than other types of vegetation. I don't know those questions. That's why I would rely on probably the experts, because they're going to know, with the sand that we do in the winter, they're going to know kind of what plants would meet those conditions for the landscape that we're we're looking at doing. But the boulevards are an interest to me just because I'm sure in your area, Councilor Seeley area, they're not being mowed anyways. So, you know, it might be a natural fit to this type of development.
And then last question, do you know, because you had mentioned that there could be or would be cost savings. We know that there are already in certain communities, like in Waverly West and some of the more newer developments, they are doing this. Have you spoken to the naturalist and asked if there was cost savings in these naturalized areas?
No, some of the newer areas, I don't know if we would actually like see the costs upfront. I think where we're gonna kind of see the benefit and then really be able to tell the cost is in areas right now where we are doing mowing, where we're, you know, where when we're doing our GHG emissions, we're already kind of taking that into effect. Kind of the newer areas, I don't think we've taken all of that into effect yet, right? So this would be kind of a really good analyst of everything, right? Of our, we deal with those all the time. So what the emissions are, what would it be if we kind of reduced our mowing and stuff like that? What would it be? Cost for bylaws, and so there's other kind of savings I think that could be had, and then the environmental impacts on top of that.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, and I'll move extension.
That's okay. We're in questions now. Councillor Edie.
Mr. Chair, Councillor Gilroy, yeah, I'm not necessarily opposed to this idea. I'm an avid gardener and, you know, I like lots of fruit to come out of my plants, but I'm going to play the devil's advocate here a bit. So, yeah, there is the issue of people that don't cut the boulevard, as well as there's vacant lots where they don't take care of the weeds and so on. And there is one vacant lot on Selkirk Avenue, for example. It was let grow and it was mostly natural plants. But here's Sergeant Tommy Prince Memorial Park, which is now merged into the old X grounds and part of that. It was naturalized, and you get those, you know, tall prairie grasses and those kind of things. But what ends up happening is you end up having drug addiction things happening in there, needles discarded, other things, hidden weapons, for example, which is what our green team has found along Selkirk Avenue when we're cutting. We have our green team cut grass. So, and I would also, I don't know if you have any answers to this, but also they've naturalized there's some CSO properties in my ward that they're trying to go naturalization so they don't have to cut it all the time. The neighbors hate it. They state that it breeds mosquitoes and all kinds of issues like that. So, do you have answers for that kind of stuff? Like, even when we cut grass in the neighborhoods adjacent to Selkirk Avenue, I always have to instruct them to go through the tall stuff to watch out for needles and all kinds of other things like weapons and makeshift weapons, whatever. So they have to sift through that before they cut it. But if you just leave it and say kids get into the grass, don't you see that there might be a problem there?
Well, I'm going to say the same thing that I'm going to say when my park staff tells me that they don't want to put picnic benches in because it could get on fire. My community deserves nice things too. And I believe that, and then to your other question, because I think it's a relevant one, where, you know, it is different looking. And so I guess what I'm kind of wanting is if the city becomes a leader and we put up signs, we're starting to educate people and people are starting to see it more often, that these can become beautiful things. Like we see it as an unmanicured lawn right now. And so until we see more of them and understand the benefits of them, the more we talk about them as being pollinators and really important to our overall environment, the public isn't going to get it. Right now, they see it as an unmanicured lawn, right? So that's why I kind of maybe see some of the benefits to our areas, Councillor Edie, but I do want to hear what you're saying about the needles and stuff, because that's the truth. Right? But I also don't believe there's other parts maybe of our communities we could utilize and use that maybe that wouldn't be necessarily in conflict with those things.
I have one more question.
Sure. Councillor Edie.
Which I'll discuss with our head of parks and open spaces. So you're requesting a pilot, a substantially sized pilot.
Yes.
Okay. Do you think that it would be most appropriate if we went into various neighborhoods and tried to speak to people, consult, consider, try to, get people up to speed before and then utilize that space as a pilot project area?
Yeah, you could, and I would really connect with your naturalist, because I'd want to make sure we're utilizing the best place that they feel would be a good fit. And yes, communicating that with the public so they know what's going on, I think is key, and trying to get that, that real buy-in on the importance of really educating people on the importance of returning some of our areas back into the ecosystems that they once were, right? And I think that that's really important, and it will really make some of the walks a little bit more pleasurable and stuff when people are walking and they're seeing native plants and wildflowers instead of just grass.
Yep. One more question. You get a lot of, like, in my ward, in Councillor Santos's ward and Councillor Sharma's ward, we have the CPR Winnipeg Beach line that goes through. And they've never, as far as I know, they've never planted grass around those railway tracks that have existed for like 100 or more years. And I think there is like native prairie grass that grows, but do you get the complaints? People calling all the time, it's not good, it's not good, it's not, like, they get very upset.
But that's part of the education factor, and that's part of why we have to be leaders in this. And I hopefully, if municipalities are starting to change, we're starting to see a lot more, a lot more municipalities are doing this. Once we see that, we're going to see businesses follow suit. Everyone's going to, the natural progression is people are understanding that this is a positive way to do things. It reduces our costs in a lot of ways, and it also can be a benefit to our environment. So I think that overall the cost benefit is beneficial, but we do have to be leaders of the city and really show people how this can work. Omans Creek is a prime example. It's all naturalized park. People love it. And, we have it right here, and people love going for a walk in Omans Creek, right? So, but you do have to get used to it. But it is an education piece. We do have to educate people on what they're looking at.
Used to run cross country in Omans Creek.
Oh, yeah.
The high schools used to have competitions there.
Well,
Seeing no other questions, thank you. Oh, Councillor Wyatt.
Councillor Gilroy, thanks for your presentation. Are you aware that boulevards do not fall under the jurisdiction of this committee?
you know what? This is where the clerk sent it. I was kind of wondering, but I think you are Parks and Open Spaces, which covers some of the
But not
mowing.
boulevards. Boulevards fall under Public Works.
Yeah, that's that I would leave that up to the clerk to answer.
Okay,
I
and
think this
are
is
you-
going to be a multi-department to your question. You missed part of it. This,
No, I didn't miss anything.
okay.
And are
probably
you aware that
departments.
for the last 2-3 years, Public Works has already been doing a pilot on all of this?
Yeah, I know that they do some, yeah.
No, not some. They're doing extensively. We're reporting to the Standing Committee of Public Works now for months on this. This is
Well,
nothing new that we've been dealing with this already.
okay,
The
well,
Standing Committee of Public Works. I'm just curious why it's here. Because boulevards are actually not our jurisdiction. We've been already dealing with this. They've been reporting back to us. They've been having a real difficulty in terms of certain species.
right.
And they're still kind of, monitoring, see what can be done. There's some other species they're gonna try. But this effort's already underway, and it's been underway prior to the last general election, actually, at the Standing
That's-
Committee of Public Works.
That's fantastic. You'd have.
So why are we dealing with this here?
Can you maybe ask the clerk that? But I would still like to continue moving this
Yeah,
forward.
but wouldn't you not agree that it's ridiculous to have two committees working on the same thing?
No, because I
Really?
want,
That strikes
Why don't we
me
get
as
clarification on that?
Yeah,
then I'll
yeah.
ask
Strikes me as
for the,
very
clerk
inefficient.
For the
Sure.
appropriate committee.
Sure, so.
It's government unto itself. Okay, thank you. I don't have any other questions.
We'll get clarification from the clerk.
Clarification.
all right, thank you for your questions. They're all very relevant. And thank you for your work on naturalizations at the other committee. I think it's important. So
Okay.
thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Doing me already. Just, I got a code, if you don't mind, I just have to listen for it.
Verification. 4966 for Microsoft Authentication.
Yeah,
We gotta press the power button, Councilor Biden.
yeah, please.
Okay, no, Councilor Wyatt? Just for clarification, so the bylaws are with respect to grass maintenance and boulevards do fall under the Standing Committee on Community Services. So where it's a large, just general area, it falls under Public Works, but the boulevards right outside of people's homes, those fall under Community Services. And it is multi-departmental, so Public Works might be in charge of it or might have to report to this committee, but it's determined that it falls under the Standing Policy Committee on Community Services.
I can't hear you. Stands under what? Falls under what?
It falls under this standing committee.
Okay, so then why has it been reported for the last 2-3 years of Public Works?
I'm not sure like specifically which items you're talking about, but if it's like a large open space, Public Works, the Public Works is responsible.
No. Public Works is looking at the boulevards as well.
We will save that question for Mr. Domke, who will speak to these matters today. And if we need further clarification, we'll have Mr. Beresowski provide further clarification on that. All right, next delegation.
Our next delegation was Salem Robbie on behalf of Renee Hint from East Winnipeg, but I don't see them in the Zoom meeting, so we'll move on to David Brandt, who is to be heard with respect to reports 5, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11, and David is joining us via Zoom. So David, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself and turn on your video, you have up to 10 minutes.
Good morning, Mr. Grants.
Morning, trying to undo these things. There we go. And thank you for the time. Moving on to, I guess topic 5 was the most controversial, protecting trees on private property. It sounds positive. The agenda item is very vague. Whoever wrote it wanted us to like it. It uses the same words throughout with no explanation. I suggest that it's so vague that it may violate the city's promises for transparency in dealing with the public. There's no indication how a tree on private property will be protected by City Hall. Will landowners be forbidden to trim or cut their own trees? A large tree can do irreparable damage to a residential property. It can kill. Luckily, a tree hasn't killed anybody here lately. Anyway, I love my trees, but they're not perfect. They're not deities. They can do real harm to lawns, homes, and underground infrastructure. Like any cellulose-based plant, every tree is a lifetime net producer of greenhouse gases because cellulose turns into methane. If a tree is ruining the livability, use, and enjoyment of a private property, should the city, and not the property owner, be the final arbiter on the care the tree receives? The opaque wording tells me that someone wants the real meaning kept a secret. Is this true? We'll find out as this progresses. Obviously, there's the search for similar bylaws in other cities, and we'll see how it plays out. On topic 7, I support this agenda item. For many years, the city has been giving mixed messages to residents on weeds and lawns and grassy flowering plants. We're told that if a blade of grass stands more than 6 inches tall, we're in violation of a bylaw and subject to ticketing. In some weather conditions and early in the year, cutting short can do harm to your lawn. At the same time, much city-owned land has grass and weeds that stand far more than 6 inches tall. Keep in mind that most boulevard spaces should be capped. This is the space between it down the middle of the road, if you do not want the road to crumble. Grassy boulevard spaces and ones covered in tall flowering plants allow water to soften the gravel base of the road. If that road is a bus route, that guarantees that the pavement will break up in too few years. We cannot afford this. This agenda item makes a good case for benefiting pollinators. No toxin has been applied to my lawns for decades. We pull weeds mechanically from the ground instead to benefit wildlife. I've been following the efforts of Public Works on this, and they were trying to do a clover trial, and then the contractor gave up or went out of business or something. Much of my front lawn is covered in ground cover species that are less than 3 inches tall, and so they don't need to be mowed. So it's a great thing when you can do that, the clover experiment. I believe this one instead is saying that 2 foot high flowering plant would be the target. I believe your committee should now strive. I think this has legs. This topic 7 has lots of support in the community and at City Hall. But I think your committee should strive to be consistent in its rules for the land, for our land and your land. We note that most times when somebody's in violation of the tall grass bylaw, it's because the absentee landowner doesn't care. And therefore you get a lawn that goes a month or 2 without ever being cut. And it looks a bit strange, and it's not because of prettiness, it's because of laziness. So that's something that maybe that bylaw should be revisited. Anyway, that's all for that topic, and I'm sure you'll progress on it, but I'd like it to be consistent that if somebody's getting a ticket because they got 10-inch grass in their lawn and the city land across the street has 15 or 20-inch high plants, that seems wrong. On the other hand, these other ones, the requested information on topics 8, 9, 10, and 11 will help councillors make good decisions. Seeing actual forestry plans would be good. City Hall seems too willing to throw our money around to third parties to randomly sprinkle seedlings around the community. A forestry plan based on consensus would be nice to see. When Ottawa tried to mitigate the mess they made by welcoming more people than we have homes for, they spoke as if green space was a bad thing. Ottawa told us last year that green space must all be covered in new homes. That if there's a green space in a block of what used to be solid homes from a home that's no longer there anymore, that had to be filled with an apartment building. Doing that will harm our communities if all our green space is paved over or has a house built on it. We must avoid that. So let's see the green space plan. And I thank you very much for your time.
Speech on.
Thank you very much, Mr. Grant. Just one, did you know, I'm sure you are aware, but just to make the public also aware that for overgrown properties, whether it be private or public, all can be reported through 311 and enforced by the neighborhood livability bylaw that applies to private homeowners and the city of Winnipeg.
Yes, I'm aware. And on the other hand, it does hit the local media when we have so many that we can't keep up with them. And I think that happened with our wet spring that we were, there were a lot of lawns uncut, getting warnings and so on. So I am in favor of the negligent homeowners being reminded and ticketed if necessary. But it's just the inconsistency of city land not being mowed because we don't have the people or whatever, and the line between a negligent homeowner and a city flower garden, we could call it. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
That concludes the delegations.
Good. We can move into our reports today. We have 11 items.
Mr. Chairperson, I don't want to disturb anybody, but I'm trying to do this second verification
We'll
thing.
take
It's
a quick
getting really irritating.
2-minute pause here and we'll come right back with our reports. Welcome back to the Standing Policy Committee on Community Services. We have 11 items on our agenda today. We'll start with report number 1, the agreement to share data with Shared Health Manitoba and Unity Health Toronto. And we have members of the public service, Chief Schmitz.
Yes, good morning. Thank you. Joining me here this morning is Dr. Neil McDonald. Neil is one of our training officers at our Fire Paramedic Service Paramedic Training Academy. Neil is author of the report and has been spearheading the work with this. And so he'll provide a brief update, overview of the report, and then we'll take your questions.
Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chief Schmidt, and thank you to the members of the committee for welcoming us here today. As you all know, the Winnipeg Fire Paramedic Service responds to all calls for medical service within the city of Winnipeg, and these include cases of out-of-hospital cardiac arrest. Currently, we don't have any access to the hospital outcomes of cases we treat for out-of-hospital cardiac arrest, which limits our ability to make improvements to our care. The situation is not unique to Winnipeg, and as a result, many jurisdictions, both within Canada and across the world, have established mechanisms for collecting hospital outcome data and then sharing that data among similar jurisdictions to enable quality improvement initiatives and future research into care practices. The purpose of the report today is to seek council approval to enter into a data sharing agreement among Winnipeg Fire Paramedic Service, Shared Health, which would allow us to collect hospital outcome data, and then a national out-of-hospital cardiac arrest research consortium called CANROC, which collects data from emergency medical services organizations across the country for the purpose of quality improvement and future research. Yes, Councillor?
No, I'm directed through the
Just
chair.
when you're done with your presentation, just let us know.
This national organization, CANROC, was founded in 2016. It currently includes jurisdictions representing the majority of the population of Canada. It's in a mix of provincial jurisdictions and in some cases municipal jurisdictions like Winnipeg. We would like to seek entry into that organization, again, to facilitate collection of hospital outcome data and to participate in the national initiative to improve patient outcomes. The sharing of data would be governed by all the applicable research ethics boards and privacy commissions within the province, and we've achieved approval from all of the relevant boards and commissions prior to submitting this report. So at this point, the data sharing agreement would be the final step in order to enable the project to move forward. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Councillor White?
Sure. My first question is, why is the CEO still listed here on the report? And Jack?
This report was in the system prior to the changes that they announced.
Since it's been published, we would have had time to correct that. I don't want to vote on a report with the former CAO's name on it, because that's what we're being asked to vote on.
I think he signed off on it.
Well, that's what I'm concerned about.
He signed off it before.
Based on the EPC report, EPC about his performance, I'm concerned that we're voting on a report with his name on it. Has this gone through the new CAO? This report? Has he read it?
The new CAO has not, well, I'm not sure if he's read the report or not. It's in.
You're not the only one, by the way, Chief. There's another report here too.
Yeah.
So, another department.
I would anticipate.
I don't know how something like this is not caught.
Mr. Chairperson, this is not relevant.
Totally irrelevant. It's totally irrelevant. We're having a vote on this. We're having a vote on this report. I'm not gonna vote on it with his name on there.
So for the clerical factors of this report, we'll leave those to, a different discussion. Do we have any questions regarding the?
I do.
Go ahead.
And I appreciate Mr. Chairperson, you take that under advisement and get back to me.
Thank you.
So what now do they share with us? What do they share with us now, Shared Health?
On a case-by-case basis, we have do share information on various conditions at various times. I'll defer to the chief to list those, but on a routine basis, the pre-hospital care rests with WFPS and the hospital care rests with Shared Health, and they don't speak on a routine.
So what I don't understand is, let's say they share the data with you. And Shared Health right now is a disaster. Our entire medical system in Winnipeg is a disaster. So let's say you get data saying that you dropped off a patient who was suffering trauma, whatever it would be. And they sat on the waiting room or on a bed, a cot where you drop them off for 9 hours and blah, blah. How is that going to help? I don't understand. Take me through that.
So in this case, the patients we would identify for sharing data would be only those who suffer out of hospital cardiac arrest. Those that are transported to hospital are in the most critical condition and would always receive care immediately upon arrival to hospital. And the hospital outcomes we're seeking are very simple about whether that patient survived to be admitted to hospital. And if they did survive, did they have a good neurologic outcome? And that's a simple numeric rating on a scale from 1 to 4. Or were they pronounced dead in the emergency department or dead at some point in their admission? So it's a very, very limited outcome data that is essential to evaluating pre-hospital care, but not a broader overall comment on the state of our emergency departments right now.
So are you saying right now, is this partly being driven because there's a concern in terms of our response time? Because that's the only concern, that's the only thing that I could see.
This is
The
about
sooner you
the-
get them get somebody into a hospital, right? The greater chance, I suppose, as a layperson thinking they would survive. Is it the issue that sometimes the fire truck gets there prior to the ambulance, and even though there's paramedics on the fire truck, is that the issue?
So broadly speaking, no. Response times are a factor that can have influence on somebody's survival from out of hospital cardiac arrest. But this initiative is designed to collect basic outcome data that can be used for quality improvement in future research across the board. It's not a topic specific initiative.
We're really, Counselor, talking about the care that's provided to the patient, the various treatments, and
Yeah.
you know, over the
What would
course
be the best practice?
over the course of time, best practice has changed with pre-hospital care.
Fair enough.
In terms of the regime of drugs that are used in treating patient in cardiac arrest, ventilation equipment, monitoring equipment, all of these things have changed over the course of time as a result of research. This is also, I should point out, not the first data sharing agreement that the city has entered into. A number of years ago, we did sign on with the Manitoba Center for Health Policy here in Manitoba, and we are already sharing data with them. What that has enabled us is it's enabled Dr. McDonald to also be able to access some of the information within that database because we are now a member. It's also provided opportunities for researchers here in Manitoba to access our data that's housed at MCHP to perform research. Once that research is concluded and the outcomes are found, all of the learnings from that becomes available to us because it is our data that is being used. So as a partner of that, it's very beneficial.
That's all the jurisdiction.
Correct. And this essentially is going to allow us to have access to the same type of outcome from the research data.
I mean,
And I'll just add, in terms of importance, in 2023, there was a 1,677 out of hospital cardiac arrests that the WFPS responded to in our city. So over 1,600 people. And of that, there were 600 patients that were actually resuscitated and transported to hospital. And then roughly another 800 that didn't meet the requirements for a resuscitation to occur, and then roughly 200 where the resuscitation took place at the scene and then was discontinued. So that's a lot of people.
yeah, well, I just want to say that, personally speaking, the paramedics and fire medics are excellent.
Thank you.
And the issue is not our service, the issue is shared health, total disaster. Is there any way that we could say we'll do this subject to them improving wait times and getting their crap together? Right? You know, that would be nice, you know, because this government's not doing anything. conservatives made a mess of it, and now this government not changing anything from what I could see. This governing is shaking hands and kissing babies. Anyway, all right, I'm gonna thank you very much. Thank you for supporting this as long as that name is.
Counselor Santos?
And question about the, I guess, the database. I'm gonna get a little bit more technical. What was the company you had mentioned that the database that you're sharing it with? Was that Canadian versus?
Manitoba Center for Health Policy is the one we.
No, the one that we're doing, this one.
So the national database is called the Canadian Resuscitation Outcomes Consortium, or CANROC. That is physically housed at the University of Toronto, or the St. Michael's Hospital, and part of the University of Toronto. And it's called, the data sharing agreement would be with Unity Health, which is the overseeing organization for CANROC.
Okay, that's perfect. You answered, that was gonna be my next question. Where is it being housed? It's physically being housed?
Yes, in
Okay,
Toronto.
so it's not in cyberspace in the cloud?
Well, I mean, it's electronic data. The actual servers
Yeah,
that
the
base
servers.
that are in Toronto.
Based in Toronto. Okay. Do you, I guess is getting a little bit more technical, but what are the safeguards put in place for any data breaches or cybersecurity attacks? Are you fully confident in the University of Toronto that they have everything in place?
Yes, so in combination or in the same manner as other jurisdictions across the country, there are two stages to our data collection. So the first stage will be sharing data with Shared Health. And at that stage, internally here in Winnipeg, we'll have to have identified information that we share with Shared Health, where they populate the hospital outcomes. So at that stage, we'll be using the Shared Health digital secure platform that they use to ensure the data security of all of their information. And then that information will be de-identified and transferred to Unity Health. So no identifying information will be leaving the Shared Health digitally secure platform. And once it's at Unity Health, they have a well-established cybersecurity program, but it won't have any identifying information at that point. It will only be de-identified data of Winnipeg residents.
Okay, and then I had saw in the report, future opportunities for funding to support ongoing participation will be considered after implementation. Can you kind of talk a little bit more about what that means, please?
So currently, participating members of CANROC do receive some funding from the Heart and Stroke Foundation. In discussions with CANROC, there is the possibility of some funding being available to Winnipeg. At this stage, our priority, and in consultation with CANROC, they've asked us to demonstrate the feasibility of joining the group, transferring the data, ensuring data quality, and getting a sense of the time requirement on our ends. Right now, to establish that feasibility and do some pilot testing, that time falls within the routine duties of myself and in my role. If it goes forward and we transfer 800 files a year, there would be the possibility to get some funding from Shared Health in order to compensate an employee at our service to contribute this data.
Okay, excellent, very great. Yeah, that's all the notes that I have.
Councilor Edie?
I had one, I don't know how long ago it was, but, I believe, there was a leader, in, heart health, in a kind of a program being run out of St. Boniface Hospital, might be about a decade ago. Is that still in place?
Okay. Yes, so I think you might be referring to the collaboration between WFPS and St. Boniface Hospital to transport acute heart attacks directly to definitive treatment at St. Boniface. And so that is still in place, and we have a nationally leading program to get patients to definitive care in under industry standard times.
Yeah. Okay. So that's, okay, so it's not really about collecting data for analyzing and doing additional research to improve the paramedic system.
No, slightly different conditions. So that would refer to heart attacks, but before people have actually, their heart has actually stopped, if we can get them to definitive care quickly, we can reverse that process.
Okay, all right, thanks.
All right.
I'll move the report.
Quick question. Yes, Councillor Wyatt.
So, right now, what is the fleet of the ambulances in the city? What's our fleet? Right now,
We have about 35 units.
we have 35 units
Yeah,
operational right now.
physical units.
Okay. And, is there kind of, do you have a bit of a, in case one breaks down, do you have like, standbys?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes. For example, last night, the shift report listed 4 spare ambulances available.
I'm hearing stories coming out of the paramedics, there's a high burnout rate happening, that they're being pushed pretty hard right now. And that we haven't increased the fleet the way that the department has requested internally during the budget process. Hasn't happened, and these paramedics are kind of get at the breaking point. And they're going pretty hard. Is there a need for more ambulances, chief?
So I think a fair comment across the board for the entire department. We're a very busy department, both in fire operations and paramedic operations. And not a day goes by that you won't see news reports in the local media regarding the work that our members are doing. There is high volume, both in medical calls and fire calls. To your point in question, in terms of resources, it's something that we've built into the shared health contract to require the discussions to occur. We did, with the last signing, we received 2 additional ambulances, and I believe it was 24 paramedics. We're currently, as you're all aware, recently the provincial budget was passed. There was a mention in there of approximately $10 million to be dedicated to community paramedic initiatives. So we have been meeting regularly with Shared Health to discuss what portion of that we can expect to see flow towards the city of Winnipeg so that we can add to our community paramedic resources. So this will not be additional ambulances. It will be community paramedic resources. That is, and we've talked before at committee about the low priority calls and having paramedic working in our communications center. Right now, we have a medic working in there. We part-time basis. We need to get that to 24/7 full-time. And then we also are looking to increase our complement of community paramedics in the mobile small SUV cars that can respond to the low priority incidents. This is important because while it's important to get a paramedic to all the patients that are out in the community, we need to keep our transport ambulances available for the most critically ill patients, like the patients that were described in the report that we're discussing today. So while in your conversations with folks in the community, that may not look like an additional transport ambulance, we really believe that it's the community paramedic programming that we need to bolster in order to take the load off the transport units. So that's where we're focusing right now.
And how many more community paramedics will this budget deliver? The money announced by Broadway?
We were looking for, off the top of my head, I don't remember the exact number, but it's enough to put the 2 additional 24-hour Epic paramedic cars on. Right now, those cars only work during peak daytime hours.
Oh, really?
And we're looking to expand that to 24-hour coverage.
Yeah, so the idea is through the call center, I guess, you
Yes,
do a triage
correct,
and you determine whether or not an ambulance is needed or
correct,
a paramedic on the scene without requirement for transportation.
correct. Yeah.
And then that takes the pressure off the need for high price ambulance.
Yeah, that's.
You know, when I was, it's 18 officers, police officers and staff, one cruiser car. When you take into fact that there's 2 police officers, all their vacation time, sick time, it's 18 officers for one cruiser car. What is it for an ambulance?
Our staffing ratio is 1.34 in paramedic operations, so, and.
How many paramedics and staff required to staff one ambulance?
So I'll start with the community paramedic car first, so that.
Well, putting that one aside, but let's say you get, say council says here's money for another ambulance, how much money do we have to give you? Like how many paramedics does it take with holiday time and everything included, right?
Between 10 and 11. You
10 and
can't
11.
get a half person.
Okay, yeah, 'cause yeah, you mentioned 24 paramedics and 2 more ambulances, so I thought maybe it was a dozen each. Okay, very good, thank you.
Counselor Santos, are you prepared to move the recommendation?
Thank you, Doctor.
Yes.
All right. So moved by Counselor Santos.
I'd like to have that name out of there.
That won't be happening today. But I have already brought it to the CAO's attention.
All right.
Doesn't matter.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? That is carried. Item number 2, agreement with Powder Emulsions Division of
What's the CAO at the time of this report?
Cenepius Energy Incorporated for fire protection service, the Powder Emulsions Facility. Got that all up.
Thank you. So joining me for this report is Deputy Chief Scott Wilkinson. Chief Wilkinson is responsible for fire operations and training. The city is seeking to approve to enter into a new contract with Pounder Emulsions for fire protection services at its Day Street facility for a 5-year period. I will just ask Chief Wilkinson to provide some brief details on the report and the contract.
Thanks, Chief. This is, would be fairly brief. This is a renewal of a pre-existing contract with the corporation located on Day Street, just outside the city limits. As you may recall, there was a significant incident there some years ago that the Winnipeg Fire Paramedic Service became involved in to help mitigate any risk to the citizens of the city of Winnipeg at that time. Since that time, the corporation has requested a service agreement for additional fire protection from the city, which comes with an annual retainer and call-out costs as required as stipulated in the contract and report. At this point, they're just looking to renew that agreement.
For how many years?
5.
I remember the first one.
Counselor Wyatt?
I'm very familiar with the Yarmouth Springfield and their practices, I'll call it that, and their land use decision making. And I remember when this was subject to provincial hearings, this Husky oil facility, which now sounds like the previous agreement was Husky Energy Limited, April 21st, 2021, which would have been a 5-year agreement as well, I'm assuming.
Yeah, at that point, they had, it was not a 5-year agreement, and that they, some issues occurred corporately with some change orders to Cenovus Energy, and then they contacted us. That agreement had lapsed, and then now they're looking to reinitiate that agreement.
So who is Pounder Emulsions?
Pounder Emulsions is a subsidiary of Cenovus Energy, which is located on that site. Cenovus is the corporate parent company.
I see. And where are they based?
I don't have the exact location. I believe they're based outside that, so.
Yeah, I'm sure they're based out there. But and then on top of that, we had some other issues in this industrial park. Whereby industry further to the east of this site ignited, causing a massive plastics fire. That we were very fortunate the winds were from the south. Because if they were from the north, the entire east end of Treniscon would have had to have been evacuated. We learned after the fact. At the time I wrote a lengthy letter to Premier Dewar, nothing was done about it. Which doesn't surprise me. You know, I guess the question is this. Why should we do these one-offs for them? Because they approached us. I want to say it was when Jim Brennan was in your chair, Chief Schmidt. And they came to us and said, hey, what would it cost the RM? This is the RM now coming to us. What would it cost the RM to provide, for the city of Winnipeg to provide us full fire coverage. Brennan took them information back by this committee and provided them a quotation. It was, I think, just shy of $1 million a year for full fire paramedic coverage, which would probably have involved us upgrading Station 25, who knows what. The RM of Springfield said, "Oh, thank you for the information. We're not interested." In other words, we're prepared to leave our mill rate low and take a risk. Well, they're not the ones taking the risk. We're the ones taking the risk because if anything happens there, right, it's our residents that are going to be on the front line. There's other industries out there that are not just these guys that probably need a contract to be covered by us. My concern is though that we're doing these one-offs instead of saying to them, hey, we're not going to do one-offs anymore. And then we also have Border Chemical, just so the committee knows. There's this industry and we have another $30,000 a year deal roughly with Border Chemical. Border Chemical does work for Homeland Security. If we turn around and say, guess what? We're not going to renew your contract. Talk to your RM about coming back to us to cover that entire industrial park. It would then happen because we're covering border and we're going to cover these guys. Springfield municipality washes their hands. And I'm tired of it, which is why I can't support this. I want us to push back for the good of the city because not only that, if something goes on here, if some issue happens, this is going to be big. Right? It's not going to, this is just so everybody knows, this is an oil refinery. Okay, basically, it's an oil facility. Yeah, if something goes, it'll be big. Not only will it tie up in Station 25, it'll tie up in Station 21, it'll probably pull on Kimberly. You're gonna have to get the hazmat guys in, all the material. And it'll affect the entire city by signing this contract here today. And I'm not gonna put the rest of the city at risk anymore. They gotta come to the table here in Springfield. And I'm gonna be, when is Borders coming up? When is their contract due?
I don't have a specific date.
I'd like to know.
Have that contract. We can look at.
Because we should put them on notice. Because I'd like to put them on notice and say, you know what? That's enough. You guys, you're an RM now, and they're approving more development as we speak. That's heavy industry. And we have one fire. 10,000 people could be ordered to be evacuated overnight. And they don't give a shit. They don't give a damn. Excuse my function. Anyway.
In response, so I'll start with the contracted properties, just so that the committee is aware of what we do have in place. So
more than the two.
Yes, so in addition to the Pounder emulsions, which we had in place for 3 years, as was explained, there is also Border Chemical, and we also have a contract in place with the Manitoba Public Insurance Corporation, contracted property on Plessis Road, just north of the rail line. And that has been a long-standing contract as well for an industrial site at that location. It's one of their service centers and I believe a major storage facility for vehicles. So those are the three that we have in place, all in the general Transcona area. I'll just address your comment in terms of risk. You know, we already, this contract came into place originally after that fire event that previously occurred. I think it's important to note that fire, we weren't able to extinguish even ourselves. We had to request external assistance from the Canadian Armed Forces, Department of National Defense, and also the Winnipeg Airport Authority. They dispatched one of their foam boss, the large airport fire trucks, and that vehicle assisted in extinguishing the fire. So in terms of fire risk, and also I'll go back to the day in question because both Scott and I were at incident command at that event. You know, we were moments away from having to order a major evacuation for parts of Transcona and the school area. So there definitely is risks to the city of Winnipeg, and I believe it is in the city's best interest to enter into the agreement. We know that the local municipality, and I mean, Councillor, to your comments, they would be challenging for them to mount an effective fire operation at a location like this. And so it's for that reason that we suggest that we enter into this agreement for the protection of the city, and of course, fire paramedic service also being responsible for the Office of Emergency Management. We have, you know, the view of this from the other lens as well in terms of the risks to the city. Your other points are well taken in terms of the development in the capital region, and I think there are tables that the appropriate discussions can occur at regarding fire protection in the capital region to ensure, and those discussions need to occur. And
I appreciate what you're saying, Chief. I've just heard it all before. When the fire blew up there, when that plastic plant went up, there's all these promises, we're gonna make all these changes. And we're gonna make sure that those firefighters out in the Arm of Springfield, those are the guys, I went out there, they're fighting it with water. Can't put out the plastic fire with water. And standing there around there with no equipment on it. No respiratory gear whatsoever. And their bosses were not allowing your guys to come on the site because they were worried about the cost. And I basically said, we're going on the site. And that was a Thanksgiving long weekend. I remember I was driving out to Portage and Prairie and I saw the glow when it was coming back, or the smoke was coming back. It was now dark. I saw the glow, dropped the family off it and went to the fire. And so, you know, I guess my concern here is I've heard all this before. The Arm of Springfield has got this cowboy planning land use system, and the province is letting him do it. And to heck with the consequences. And my view is, I mean, I could support maybe another year on this contract, but to send them a message, the RM has to get serious. The RM has a mill rate that's probably a third of our industrial mill rate, a third, you guys. So they're subsidizing these businesses to move out of the city, the low mill rate, and by the way, zero business tax. All right? Yeah. But they're expecting us now to come in. They want their cake and eat it too. That's what I'm saying. For us to backfill and give them a nice little deal here, which is for an oil company, 30 grand is pretty cheap for fire protection. So, and I hear what you're saying about MPI. I'm an old commercial industrial insurance broker. There's different type of risks. The MPI risk is totally different than this risk. And you know, so or chemical goes up, we would feel it here. Downtown would shake. Okay, so I guess my concern is that I'm prepared to let it go for another year, but we have to send the arm. They have to have the political will and leadership to go to that industrial park and say, look, we're going to have to do something on your mill rate because we're going to do proper fire protection. Either they're going to do it or it'll be contract again through us. And Brendan did an extensive analysis and provided them a full quotation of that service at the time. And they said, thank you, but no thank you. Anyway, those are my comments, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, so just to clarify, you are correct. The base rate will be it's in the neighborhood of 30,000. Well, there are per hour charges for every apparatus that would attend to an incident there. So that could, for a large scale incident, be upwards of $150,000 to $200,000 in fees for the fire response. So
which they have insurance for.
Councillor Edie?
I totally agree with Councillor White. The other arms around, but do we not have some kind of an agreement with Centerport that we fight fires in Centerport North in the RM of Rosser?
There is no agreement in place. The only contracted agreements, or as I stated earlier, Counselor.
But is there not an agreement with, like, they didn't build a new fire station out in RM of Rosser who doesn't really have the ability to fight?
Yeah, that area, there are portions of that area that fall within the municipal boundary, so we will respond to those locations. And then the other areas are serviced by the RM of Rosser.
They are,
Yes.
okay. All right,
And I'll just add one more item to that question. So when a call comes into a location like that, that borders or is outside of our service area, we sometimes will receive requests from the rural municipality to provide assistance. Because there are no formal agreements in place, we then have to ensure that we have approval from an authority within the RM to acknowledge that they will compensate the city of Winnipeg for the firefighting fees. In the absence of a formal agreement, that can take time, and sometimes you don't have the time. So I'll just add that again to the importance of having written agreements already in place.
so the RM of Springfield, yeah, like, so, and there was some controversy. RM of McDonald quite some time ago was looking at industrial right around ours, just outside of our city, where there's a potential threat to, like, your job is to protect Winnipeggers, right?
Correct.
And that's why you're entering into this contract. You want to make sure that Winnipeggers are protected. I don't think you were the chief when they were building this thing, but the Metro Winnipeg, like the laws, they're about to put in place all of the development rules through the province. Were you asked to provide any input in terms of like risk of, there's all kinds of risks. Do you know if your service was asked to contribute concerns?
In terms of the development rules that were.
Yeah, there's the province hasn't passed them yet. This is for Metro, not like for this capital region, okay? So they call it Metro or whatever they're calling it now, whatever. They were put together a whole bunch of, and I think they're doing a public consultation right now on those rules and all that kind of stuff. But in the original iteration of creating this Metro Winnipeg capital region development plan, do you know if your department was consulted at all as to, like, so because they're identifying, like for Springfield, they are identifying that as an industrial area, right? But so there's going to be expansion, right?
So I don't know.
There's more expansion going on.
I don't know
There's more going on
specifically.
now, right?
Oh, yeah, and south of this power transco, we're getting sandwiched.
Right, okay.
I don't know
Yeah.
specifically if we were consulted. I do know we have a number of staff that work closely with property planning and development in terms of reviewing any documentation that comes from the province. For example, we recently reviewed some of the fire code changes that were put forward. And then they also work closely in terms of the precinct development here in Winnipeg to forecast for the future and determine future fire service requirements. And that relationship is closer than it ever has been before, because we cannot afford to have another repeat of what occurred in Waverly West, where we had significant housing development and no fire services in place. So that those conversations are happening in the input.
Okay, okay. Your department, you have a section in your department that has the ability to analyze the whole capital region development as it relates to the outskirts of the city of Winnipeg?
No, we have a one plan examine position. That's a fire prevention officer, highly skilled individual that's embedded in with property planning and development, and then the majority of their workday is reviewing development plans within the city of Winnipeg.
So under, I think he's a deputy chief now, Jay Shaw.
Yeah, Chief Shaw, yeah.
Chief Shaw, sorry, deputy chief.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's emergency measures and stuff.
Emergency management.
Yeah, so what we've been talking about is, you know, I remember Winnipeg Public, the WFPS analyzing the danger of rail disaster and putting together plans and that sort of stuff. So your department has a capability, like if we, I don't know if we have to pass a motion or whatever, but to analyze the risk and make recommendations to the province as to what those RMs should be doing in terms of those high risk industrial areas. They could probably handle that.
In terms of hazard analysis, that's all work that's done within the emergency preparedness portfolio. You're correct.
Okay, good. Thanks.
Councillor Santos, I believe you had a question.
Just one quick question and just kind of maybe excuse my my naivety, but I don't see anywhere in here where it talks about more proactive measures or inspections of this location to ensure that they're, you know, obviously safe, right? Like what, I know we do industrial inspections. I know we've kind of reduced that portfolio a little bit for low risks, but obviously this is a high risk location. Are they doing, are you guys doing like quarterly reviews of the location and more like what proactive steps are being done to ensure that, you know, obviously this location is meeting up to code or meeting up to standards or so that we don't have another. So I'm not familiar with what happened in the past and why it happened, but I'm just curious now, kind of moving forward. What is the plan?
Yeah, there is notations within the service agreement contract that they will cover the costs and agree to the normal inspection process of the city of Winnipeg, that our inspectors will be going out to conduct those inspections on the stipulated basis. So we continue to do that.
Is that on a yearly basis or quarterly or
It would be the same process we use within the city for industrial occupancies. I believe it is yearly.
yearly? Is there a way to increase that?
There's possibly a way to do that. Sure. At this point, we don't have it included, but it's, again, we would have to verify that in line with other types of occupancies, but could be done.
Taking a picture of the asbestos foam ceiling that's hanging over top of us and open. Anyway, I guess, I'm looking at your terms and conditions. We're kind of behind the ball in the sense that 2024, we gotta play catch up, it looks like. In a sense, right? Which is normal, I know. So we got 2024. And what I like, this is what I wrote, Mr. Chairperson. Okay, it's a new clause. Well, actually, a couple things. Under the term, if you could, councilors, look at your terms and condition appendix A and administration, date of execution of agreement for a 2-year term ending December 31, 2025. Renewal, I'm not sure why it doesn't say this already, because it always comes here. It says any renewal is subject to CAO approval. It should be saying a CAO approval and standing policy committee. Unless we're delegating authority here that we're not aware of. And then a new clause, which is future contract policy renewal, I called it. At the bottom. And I can give this to the clerk. She can read my handwriting. As of January 1st, 2026, in other words, the end of this contract, by a negotiated agreement between the city of Winnipeg and the rural municipality of Springfield, WFPS services will be extended on the basis of coverage for the entire industrial park located north of Gunner Road. That's the arm of Springfield Industrial Park. The only way this is gonna get addressed is if we finally put our foot down and say, we're not doing these one-offs anymore. They're too dangerous. You guys gotta, if you want to act like a urban municipality, if you want to gain the taxes that are beneficial to your RM, like an urban municipality, which clearly they do, because they're approving more developments as we speak, then you gotta start behaving like one, which means having policies in place that ensure proper fire protection and other. I mean, this is the basis of municipal government, right? This goes back to Benjamin Franklin, like fire halls and fire insurance. Why did we create municipalities? Largely because we had fires and we had to sort them out as a community. It all started from fires, ironically. So, you know, these guys are, I can't support them constantly getting all these new developments. A lot of it taking our tax base, and then they come in with their low taxes and everybody loves it until there's a problem. And then there's a problem and everybody throws up their hands, and guess what? We go in like for the rescue, you know. That's, you know, you want a business and you want to have that protection as per your commercial insurance policy or industrial insurance policy requires fire protection. They don't even have fire hydrants in this industrial park. They didn't even budget for a fire hydrant in some of the parts of this. It's anyway, that's another story, but that's what I'd like to see. And then put Border Chemical on notice. When is their contract done? You know?
I would have to confirm that, but it would be coming up in the next year or two.
Yeah.
So I'll look for a comment from WFPS here, but just so I'm understanding this correctly, instead of the one-offs as we're dealing with here, you would like to see the RM Springfield be forced to pay for every single one of their businesses, or
Forced is an unfortunate word. I would prefer to say negotiate, but to let them know that we're tired of the one-offs. No more one-offs. Okay. And by the way, this does not cost the RM of Springfield anything, Mr. Chairperson. They just pass it through on their mill rate. They adjust their mill rate, tell their businesses, we got to raise the mill rate to cover the cost of the fire. Doesn't cost the RM of Springfield a thing. They'll pass it on to their consumer, who happens to be those businesses there. And that's that. And now we got the coverage in place. And now, you know we can build in the proper resources to deal with a crisis up there, which we know is only a matter of time based on their record. It's a matter of time. And I just want to be on the record on this stuff. You know?
Yeah, I hear you on that. I'll allow for the public service to provide comment. I think ideally these RMs need to have full-time or more than volunteer emergency services, ideally. But I don't know that, you know, identifying Springfield as just the one RM that borders Winnipeg would be necessarily fair or productive, but public service comments.
Can I just make a suggestion, Mr. Chair? I mean, we're already into 2024, right? Obviously, the coverage is still there. You need to renew it for 2024. We're halfway through. If the committee chooses and it allows the department some time to take it back, I'm more than happy just to table this. If we can table a report, allow you to maybe pick up the phone, have some conversations with the RM and say, this is our concerns, this is the direction we want to go. And let's see what they come back with. You know, I'm curious to see what that That time, that was probably about 10 years. When was Brennan chief? How long ago was that? 10 years ago?
The Redonda incident would have been 8 or 9 to 10 years ago.
Yeah, it was after that. So, I mean, it'd be interesting to see, there's new leadership in the RM, new Reeve, new mayor, new council, right, since then. New CAO. It'd be interesting to get the response. So like, and this gives the department some time, I'd be prepared to do that. If the committee's will is there.
Can I ask the department to speak to the proposed amendments to begin with? You have them all jotted down there?
To address your comment first, Mr. Chair, regarding the fire protection in capital region. I would concur with your comments in terms of the development that's occurring within the capital region, the rural municipalities bordering the city of Winnipeg. Both the residential and industrial developments and growth. It would definitely, from our perspective, be in those RM's best interest to start looking at full-time fire protection services, which would be a move away from the on-call, paid on-call volunteer models that most of them, therefore all of them, are operating. So I think that is a valid comment based on the growth that's occurring in those areas. And the service requests that we've had to provide assistance in those areas, even within the last 3 years. In terms of the proposed amendments, the proposal to move to a 2-year term, that is something that we can take back. The discussions that have occurred, we'll have to go back to the ownership and indicate that that's the desire, is to go to a 2-year term. I think the discussions around the provision of fire service in that entire area, we'll need to understand whether that's on a full-time basis or at their request. I can tell you that if we're looking at a full-time basis, then there are going to be significant financial considerations for the city of Winnipeg, because I would not recommend us entering into that agreement without additional firefighters and equipment in the areas that border the municipalities that we're essentially committing to provide service for. We could not provide that level of service in the current state. We are basically we're set up to provide the service right now within the municipal boundary, meeting NFPA requirements. So if we want to have those broader discussions, there will definitely be implications to the need to increase our FTE count and our equipment. So that will come with a very large price tag.
I appreciate it.
Please.
Well, thank you for the chief's comments. And what's interesting is we're in Winnipeg, so we got, what do they call that, perveritis? We often forget that the arm of Portage and the city of Portage for nearly 50 years now, maybe 40, have had a revenue service sharing agreement in place, whereby the city of Portage provides fire protection. The mall in Portage Prairie is in the RM. It's the city that provides services like fire, like underground services, and they share in the revenue in terms of the taxes from the mall. In other words, what I'm saying, we don't have to reinvent the wheel here, folks. It's already been done in Manitoba even. So I'd be curious if we could send it back based on what the chief's saying, give them time and bring it back if time is, I know you have to renew the contract, but this, it's not as if they're going anywhere and they're already an existing client and they're paying. It's not a question of you don't know where they live.
So my thoughts on it is I don't disagree with you that we do need to address the fact that we have growing RMs in the capital region that need to take responsibility for their own emergency services. I agree with you on that. I think that that's a whole different discussion and motion that I would support if we worked on that. In the meantime, I think that it's important that if this particular company is reaching out to have these services provided and we are agreeable to providing those services at the rates indicated here, that makes financial sense and sense with coverage for Winnipeggers. I'm supportive of it as well. So I'm not opposed to looking at the capital region and, you know, at the end of the day, forcing those municipalities' hands to invest in their own services, or as the chief touched on, a significant financial commitment to the city of Winnipeg to provide those services. If that can be worked out, then I'm all for it. But at this point in time, I think that we should be addressing the item before us here to say either we are going to or not going to enter into this agreement.
No, fair enough, Mr. Chairman. I'll move the approval of the item as is. If we could entertain two motions of new business when the chief's here or when he's because I know we got other stuff on the agenda where they leave 10 leave and stuff. So
If the new business is pertaining to
this item.
our discuss, I think it's a large, I would like to take it offline and come back.
All right, fair enough.
Something that's more organized.
I'll move it at community committee and then kick it up.
Yeah.
Actually,
You can prepare the new business for this committee if you want as well.
I can move it at council, I guess. Yeah. No, so my motions would be, number one, I'm really curious about the service requests over the last 5 years, both fire and medical coming out of these. And if it's going like that, right, based on the new housing development on the edge of the city. And then the other one, provide us with some scenarios on what it would look like requiring the RMs either to provide their own fire protection based on what the chief said full time, or contract through us, full-time coverage in these RMs, or some sort of hybrid maybe, right?
Not associated with today's.
No,
Okay,
I'm just,
thank you.
I'm giving you an idea of what I'm thinking.
I just see the.
I wanted to give you an idea what I'm
I'm
thinking.
frantically typing here.
No. I just wanted you to have an idea what I'm thinking, so you don't have to read my mind.
Okay,
Yeah,
and just as,
one more question.
yeah, and I just want to get clarification from Councillor Wyatt. Are we moving forward with?
Yes, as is,
The 5
as
year?
is.
Okay, as is, okay.
Yeah.
Could we have,
But
Councillor?
Better tell border if there's comes up, if something's done.
Councillor Eve?
So just for clarification, you were talking about that consultation about changes to the fire code. So this Winnipeg Fire Paramedic Service, you do that kind of work with the Office of the Fire Commissioner of Manitoba?
Yes, they, and when they look for consultation, they don't, that is all posted, it's publicly available. They post that on their website, and we also receive regularly bulletins from the Office of the Fire Commissioner. So anytime that they're looking for feedback from it, or there's changes that they want the local services to be aware of, they'll issue a bulletin.
Has the Winnipeg Fire Paramedic Service ever worked it the other way, where you engage the Office of the Fire Commissioner to analyze hazard and risks around the outside of Winnipeg?
That has not been done to my knowledge. We engage with them on code related matters occasionally that we see in needs of improvement. We have not had formal engagement on planning and risk assessment outside the city of Winnipeg.
But now, most of the municipalities work with the Office of the Fire Commissioner in terms of their municipalities, right?
Correct.
Okay. All right, thanks.
All right, so it brings us back to the original report here. We have 5 recommendations by the Public Service. Councillor Wyatt would like to make an amendment to recommendation number 4. And I'll look to the clerk for some support here on the wording of the item. Authority to be delegated to the Chief Administrative Officer to negotiate and approve the terms and conditions of all future similar future similar agreements for the provision of fire protection services to this specific item here. with the pounder emulsions. However, the wording of the item appearing before SPC on community services for final, for
Sure. If you don't delegate the authority to the CAO, then it would still,
Can't hear you, Kate.
sorry, if you don't delegate the authority to the CAO, council will still have the authority for these renewal clauses. So if you'd like to remove that recommendation entirely,
Yeah.
you can certainly do that. I think that would also be an amendment to the terms and conditions in the renewal section.
It would de facto, the one condition on the, it's a renewal clause.
Yeah.
Any renewal subject to CAO / standing committee council approval. That's how we'd have to add it.
Okay.
But clause 3 allows them to delegate the authority to implement the conditions of this agreement. And whatever other ancillary agreements they need. Did we delegate authority when on Border Chemical too?
I don't have a report in front of me. I'm assuming at this
Yeah,
point.
these
it's
have been
worded
the
similarly.
standard
Standard
clauses.
same.
Yeah, but this is a new clause, because I've never seen this before.
I'm not aware if it's a new clause or not, Counselor. We'd have to.
Because if it was, well, we know it wouldn't be here again. We wouldn't be here. Right? So, I think in light of the fact this is involving, Mr. Chairperson, in light of the fact it's involving municipalities around the city. And that is a interjurisdictional issue. It still there should still be a political lens to these agreements. So not just administrative.
comment, sorry.
I just want to clarify then. So we're deleting recommendation 4 in its entirety, and we're also making an amendment to the terms and conditions in Appendix A by replacing renewal with any renewal is subject to council approval.
Or you could just say amend the addition of the appendices appropriately or whatever, okay.
Any comments from the councillors or the public service
I'll be voting for the motion
as amended or?
as amended, yeah. Or, well, we gotta vote on the amendment. Me, Mr. Chairperson.
That would be before us here. The items 1 through 4 with the exclusion of the original item 4. Is that what we're looking at now?
Yeah. So delete recommendation 4 in its entirety and renumber the clauses accordingly, and then make an amendment to recommendation 1, which states that you're entering into agreement in accordance with the terms and conditions attached as Appendix A, with an amendment to the renewal clause stating that any renewal is subject to council approval.
And just to ask the chief here, does this have any impact on this particular agreement here, or would we be able to move forward with it?
We can move.
Move forward? Okay. As the clerk stated, call the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? You would count me in opposition. That motion passes. Thank you very much. We'll move on
Can we take
to.
a 5-minute break, Bill?
Yes, we are, okay, so we are approaching the lunch hour here. We have several members of the public service who have come to speak to their items. If we can keep it to 5 minutes, we're at 11:15 right now.
Yeah.
So that we can try to deal with the rest of the agenda in a timely manner.
Yeah.
Thank you. 5-minute breaks. Welcome back to the Standing Policy Committee on Community Services. We are on item number 3 of our reports. That is a verbal report, east of the red recognize for the public service. We have Patton municipal accommodations.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. So just as an update on the east of the red recplex from our April 10th meeting. But so as of July 5th, I can read a few bullets here in terms of the city's project website. Engagement website has been updated with current information. So it's going to be continually updated going forward. We've had discussions on the site signage at this committee. So we've gotten some discussions and some information from the province who are funding this, and the site signage is subject to a contribution agreement with the province. We've got all the requirements from the province. The mock-up is being presented right now. And a mock-up is being developed right now and will be circulated for comment to the area councillor for his input. The Barnes and Duncan, a consultant, legal server, has been contracted to undertake some survey work at the site. And public engagement has started with various stakeholder groups. So we've identified a number of stakeholder groups who would be, who are going to be doing some one-on-one engagement on through the next coming months. So that work is ongoing and will continue on through the summer and into the fall. The design process is proceeding on the facility itself. The consultants are working hard and are on schedule for the, as we presented earlier, or late last year, in terms of the project schedule. So we're on track to begin that. So again, design processes will be getting to the output of the design process is preliminary design to a 33% completion level and a class 3 estimate that we can produce for council. There is a public open house session that is currently being planned in Q4 of 2024. So there'll be some more information coming on that. And again, we're on track to produce a report for council on costs for the facility by, I believe, Q2 2025. So that's my update at this moment. Thank you.
Q2 2025, so.
Correct. Yeah.
I'd just like to thank the public service for the update. And if there's any issues that arise from the stakeholder meetings, the one-on-one stuff, any concerns like raised by community groups, please advise myself. Maybe I can assist. Seeing that I know some of them that are my ward related, I'm not sure about. Some maybe in Councillor Schreier's ward or Waddy's ward, they'd be more adapt to address those probably. There might be some organizations because it's also the catchment of St. Boniface too. In terms of the contribution agreement you mentioned from the province, I don't want to get too much into it in the committee because it's intergovernmental. But I'm assuming that it's not involving just the cost of the sign, that we're talking about a contribution agreement. We're negotiating with them to have their buffalo on the sign on the basis that they're in for 1/3 of the entire capital program. Is that the idea?
So yeah, there is a contribution agreement that is for the $2 million right now.
Okay.
So in January of 2024, so council changed the funding source of the
first 2 million.
Yep, for the 2 million that's been approved. So that process is being in discussion. So once we have, I think from our original schedule that we produced, once we have a cost, at that point we would get into a discussion about the tri-party agreement to fund the works.
In light of the fact that, Jeff, we know in the 5-year capital forecast, we have another 15. Do we not part and parcel include that as part of the discussion as well?
For sure, that would be a city contribution that's currently in the forecast, and that should be part of it. So we could, if the intent is that potentially cost sharing on that element, or including that as part of our overall cost sharing in the facility, we can have those discussions.
And there are going to be kind of a catch-all clause in such an agreement saying that going forward, there is the spirit of cooperation, subject to an agreement, of course, that in the spirit of cooperation, that the project will be deemed a tripartite agreement. Is there someone without, I realize the provinces they're not going to want to be pigeonholed, but you know what I'm getting at?
Yeah, we've done very similar reports, Councillor, to committee indicating that moving forward to council's approval subject to an acceptable funding agreement and laying out some requirements there. So that could be part of our future report to council on the overall cost for the works. And that, so council could potentially endorse the overall project, but it's subject to a funding agreement to move forward.
No, that's great. Thank you. And my last question would be, in light of the housing component and the thinking that the city has had on this site pertaining to tax increment financing to assist us with our capital cost and how we've built in a housing component. And in light of the fact that this takes us to a class 3 estimate or 33%, as you said, is there a way to ensure
I don't want to fall into this scenario. I'm hoping we can avoid, and not saying anything's been done wrong, but just in terms of the situation, for example, in the Southwest. And I know the Southwest has been held up for other reasons, like servicing issues, road issues, stuff outside of the city's control. And then that has caused us to trigger more funds to top up that program. Is there a way for us to, in terms of getting from a class 3 to class 2 and 1, getting ready for 10, just to jump to a design build? In other words, say that we've done our consultation with the stakeholders. These are the groups that are now coming to the table to participate in this project. We've done an idea of a mock-up of design. However, we're going to go to the private sector and say, you know what? You design, build, we will own the facility, you will own the housing, we'll do the tip, but you're going to do everything. You're going to build it, design it based on, it may change the design as we see it, because they'll optimize their space and everything else to accommodate the housing. Do you follow where I'm going with this kind of thing?
Yes, Councillor. So in terms of an alternative project delivery plan,
Right.
can certainly be part of our discussions and our plan for this. So it certainly should be. So we can look at whether we're going to go forward on a traditional design bid build, or if we're going to do some sort of alternative project delivery. So that it certainly should be part of our discussion when we move forward on council's decision making on the project overall. So it can be included, and we'll have those discussions.
Okay. I'm like, the scenario I'm proposing is almost like a joint venture scenario, where they would design, build, and operate the housing. We could lease back or buy the own as part of the agreement, the facility, right? Almost like a condo strata, right? Separating the two facilities from each other legally.
There's a number of options that can be available.
Okay.
Ground leases and
We're open to that.
other options that to get the project moving forward. Yep.
We're glad to hear about that. Thank you. Any other questions? All right, I'll move that we receive this information.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wyatt. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's carried.
Let's see. Let's go.
Item number 5, tree protection on private property.
Item 4.
Oh, sorry. Number 4 is equally as important. So we'll go back to that.
Thanks,
Item
Jeff.
number 4, I apologize for alarming those in the gallery. Modernization of Louis Riel Public Library programming and operations. And
This is a motion on each Riel.
yes,
But hold on, Mr. Chairperson.
please.
This is another one of those, like, which committee? Because was this report not on the agenda on your
It
P&D
appeared-
committee
Yeah,
yesterday?
and the clerk, if she chooses, can clarify, but I'll summarize. It appeared on both agendas as it spoke to programming and
Programming's here.
MA investments. So at that committee, I'll give you a heads up before we hear from the public service. I move to receive it as information. That's my intention today.
May I just make a humble suggestion? Why don't we move it to budget? It's the same thing as moving to receive as
I
information.
wouldn't be surprised.
No.
with that.
I have a suggestion.
I'll allow the public service to open here.
Yeah.
Please.
All right, so Karen Borland, I think you guys know, manager of library services. So you're right, there were 2 motions that came out of the Riel Community Committee, both relative to the modernization of the Riel Public Library, which is a leased facility. And we have received proposals from the property owner over the years, from 2019, and then again recently in May. So essentially, we're recommending that it be received as information. That's what the PP&D committee had agreed on. The reason being is that we, in the public service, library services, we have our own kind of citywide library strategic plan, capital development plan. There's certainly priorities that have been already decided by council in the 4-year budget. And with the recent investment in the 4-year budget relative to hours and some programming, some technology, all of the libraries throughout the system are going to benefit from that, including the Louis Riel library.
And that's because of the increased funding with the Manitoba government, right?
Yes. Right. So, is there anything else you'd like to add here?
Well, we invested it.
And so when you say Louis Riel Library is included, some of the things that I have kind of mentioned here, technology and community space optimization, could you take that back as your feedback or comments from, I guess I'm assuming from the area councillor, to include some of these things as you're moving along through the 4-year capital budget, include some of this stuff?
I'll let Karen speak to that, but I think that's part of what the library service does on a regular basis.
Yeah, we do. So the admin coordinator for youth services, for example, or for adult programming.
Can you speak up, please? I can't hear you.
The admin coordinators for youth services and adult programming, for example, would be including Louis Riel in all of their annual planning for the year and any enhancements through that incremental funding that we received. But we can certainly take this list, to consult with staff, frontline staff in that branch. Check just what they're hearing from customers, what people are asking for, make sure we're delivering on those expectations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I'm just reading the motion and I'm assuming it came from the area councillor, right?
It was, I guess, came from the property owner through the counselor,
Property owner.
through
The
Yeah,
property.
this is a lease fix, a property owner. Who are leasing them. Oh, I see.
Yeah.
You mean the library space?
Mhm. So then I'm assuming the property owner
I've never heard
would
that before.
know what the library is needed. That's why it seems to be very thorough, the request, so.
I guess he likes the library.
So I just wanted to make a note that it's not forgotten. You know, when you receive it as information, it just, I find sometimes just gets slipped through the cracks, so.
and we just did a renewal with this library lease for another 5 years. And then it reverts to the city
It's the
in
final,
2029.
yeah, this is the final 5-year renewal.
5-year renewal and it
This is the
reverts
final,
back to the
yeah.
city.
It's a final 5-year renewal.
Are you able to speak to, I knew there was a report, maybe Councillor
Starts with a D.
Duncan,
ends with
thank
N.
you.
There you go.
I could probably speak to it. I did see on yesterday's PP&D that there was discussions to sell or not to sell like buildings to nonprofits that do lease. This is not one of them, is it? It was not on that list yesterday?
It's not on the list. I actually have the list right here.
Yeah, but it's not on the list from yesterday?
No, because that list does not include any programming or services that the city provides. I think that list is all nonprofits.
Maybe one suggestion, I agree with receiving information. I don't know if the counselor for St. Norbert, St. Ruben was aware. But the community committees do make appointments to the Winnipeg Public Library Board. And they'll have direct and the lax, that's the lax and the lax, but this could be referred right from community committee to the LAC. Doesn't come here. And then the LAC could take it to their Winnipeg Public Library Board meeting, and that's where these things can be worked with staff on, right? So if they want to pursue it, if they're disappointed we receive this information, community committee has the ability to refer right to the library advisory committee
From a programming standpoint.
on everything. They have the ability to refer it
The
and
LAC
then
does program.
send it, kick it upstairs to the Winnipeg Public Library. You guys talk to them all the time. I'm on the board.
No, I agree with you.
Yeah.
Okay, so, yes, Councilor Eady, and then I'll have a couple of comments and then I'll.
Well, I would like to hear from the department on his comments.
Sure. Whose comments?
Your comment.
Oh, mine.
Yeah, through the LAC.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I want to hear the feedback.
I think it's good information to share with the library advisory committee members and certainly for discussion at that level or at the board level. Of course, our board is advisory and we would be happy to discuss this and also share with them the library's priorities in completing the redevelopment strategy with branches that we're waiting to address. Current projects with Millennium Library Lobby, pending renovations at West Kildonan Library, and of course on the horizon, the new Northwest branch. So we need to discuss the big picture of what we're trying to do across the city.
Okay.
Because the idea is they suggest here, like, show spaces, that's a big change. And that's a capital.
Well, yes, so enhancing meeting rooms and study areas and creating dedicated areas for different demographics. That does sound to me like net new space, and in previous years, the landlord has come forward with a proposal to add an addition, but we don't. The city doesn't own the property around the library, and we know that the Dakota campus is working on a plan to expand, and we have parking issues between the two facilities, so an addition doesn't seem in the picture.
So that might be the long-term picture.
Yeah, I know.
Counselor,
Yeah, thank you. Just, yeah, I was looking at this and I was going, wow. I think we got a bigger problem with the Fort Garry Library needing capital, right? So. And other libraries. This one is not, it's not falling apart. It's not falling apart. So I just wanted to make that point, but so. This is kind of, looks like what, like, because you had your program, I had to utilize land dedication reserve money from the Minarski board in order to have a similar kind of study done. So there's nothing stopping the counselor for that area to have utilize some LDR money to come up with a potential plan over time.
So.
Would I be correct? Like, even if we receive this as information, there's nothing stopping that counselor from trying to move forward, look at this, with his LDR money, right?
Yeah, that's true. He could. But what would the LDR, I guess he'd have to determine what he wants the LDR funds to be used
No, I'm
for.
just.
Like municipal accommodations has been in the process of doing some assessments of all the sites. Partly to do with more of the energy efficiency and green buildings. And I think that there was information even that just came forward yesterday. So on that side, there's that piece that's going on with the municipal accommodations. The department has funds relative to technology with what we have within our budget that applies to all branches. Programming as well applies to all the branches. The community space optimization. Again, I think unless there's funds attached to redeveloping spaces, we have what we have within our adopted budget for the next 4 years. And of course, Louisville Library will benefit, as all the branches will.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to make those points, Mr. Chairman.
yeah, absolutely.
I can receive it as information.
Sure, I think that my comments are already on the record for this, so we don't need to belabor that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That is carried.
Thank you.
All right. Item number 5, tree protection on private property. This is a request for an extension of time up to 300 days. We do have Mr. Domke with us here today. If there are any questions, otherwise, is there a mover on?
I'm just wondering, this was moved by you, right? Back in the day.
Yes.
Chairperson,
Actually, it was moved by Orlico a long time ago.
Mr. Chair, get past the chair over and he moved this motion. Just wondering, in light of our effort via the whole effort on the green space master plan, which this is tied to in many ways because they're trying to preserve spaces. They're trying to find ways and means to preserve spaces. Whether we redefine this is not just tree protection, but it's an issue of regarding it is tree protection, but it's also green spaces. Like green spaces encapsulates trees. But trees also have meadows, right? this sort of thing. So where I'm going with this is that you have walkways amongst these trees that you're wanting to save one day or things like that, right? It's the whole, to make it a bigger policy piece rather than just the tree component. And because I think that might carry greater policy narrative going to the province, especially when you're asking for these powers. That's what I'm thinking. And you tied into that work that's being done by our staff, which, by the way, not a small project, $900,000 previous council earmarked to do that plan. So it's a big project. And then the other part I was going to say, so rebranding it is what I'm suggesting to you think about, Mr. Chairperson. And then the other thing to think about, it's hard to go to the province and say, hey, we want to change in our bylaws or have power to save trees, but we don't have any money to really do it. Right? And I, for one, would be open, even though I know people under the previous council were reluctant because of what happened, i.e. the impact fee fiasco. But to rebrand this to say that area charge, not impact fee, area charge can be used on a small basis, not a large amount of money actually, on an area charge basis, as long as it's targeted for that area or that quadrant of the city, so to speak, then it's legal. Then we won't get overturned on it in court. We got overturned because we turned the whole impact being a massive slush run, so to speak, citywide. But if it's dedicated to something specifically, legally, it would stand. Something to think about, because it's hard to get the province to change it and then say, like this LeMay Forest thing, like, well, buy me out. Well, we could expropriate you actually based on our existing bylaws. But that's going to cost money too, right? We don't have any accounts set up for that. So anyway, those are my thoughts. Okay. For what it's worth.
I do have a couple questions / thoughts on it, but if there's anything that Mr. Dalkey would like to speak to the extension, any sorts?
Sure, I think, Councillor Wyatt's comments, if I could address those, he's seeing the forest and not the trees. So a little bit opposite, from the perspective of the public service. We're ready to go ahead with this, because it deals with just not only trees on public property, but trees on private property too. So it's a bylaw for both those things. We're hearing clear messages in my discussions with a number of councillors if they want to see a bylaw related to this. The reason for the extension, of course, is it's very it's a huge project, relying on a lot of legal service time, meeting with other departments. There's 4 or 5 different bylaws out there actually that talk about trees. So we've got to repeal a bunch of stuff and bring new stuff in and bring it forward to this in this committee. So that's kind of where we're at right now.
But you know, just a quick step. When we say trees, is this also maintenance of trees, cutting down trees?
Protection of trees.
Protection of trees. So basically not allowing a resident on their own private property to cut down a tree at their own free will.
That's the private, potentially, that's one of the private property bylaws that are, to be honest with you, they're quite commonplace across Canada now.
Really?
Yeah.
But they haven't been challenged in the courts yet?
Well, it's under their authority, the city council's authority to make those decisions in those other cities.
No. But the bylaws in terms of the tree protection haven't been challenged in the courts yet that we're aware of?
I don't know. Like, I'm sure everything's been challenged. I'm sure there's been challenges, but I can't speak to specific.
So if we're protecting trees, I'm not finished with my question. So if we're protecting trees, then the city would now be responsible for maintaining the trees. Is that correct?
No.
Okay, so it's just like boulevards, right? Where we have boulevards on public property, but we have a bylaw in place where it's up to the owner to mow the property.
Yes.
So now let's say, okay, so now I'm just playing devil's advocate here because I'm throwing out all this casework that I'm thinking it's gonna come down the pipe. let's say we have a property that's not maintaining the tree and it's overhanging, et cetera, we're gonna utilize bylaw officers to come in and issue, I guess it would fall under community bylaw officers,
Sorry,
the issue citation.
just let's keep in mind that they're asking for a 300-day extension of time to sort these types of things out.
Okay,
Yeah, like these are all very valid questions that are gonna, and this is why they need a year to sort these things out.
okay.
Yeah.
It's a very.
A lot of things that are kind of rolling around in my head
Okay.
right now that I'm really.
Agree with the chair. Like my response to you is potentially, we don't know what it's gonna look like
Right.
yet.
Okay,
Okay.
okay.
Yes, Councilor Edie?
So another bylaw, like, the city comes in and cuts down diseased elm trees, right?
Correct.
On private property,
Yes.
right? And the resident doesn't have to pay for that, right? Sorry. And then, anyway, I'd just like to point something out. You're looking at this and you're talking about putting pressure on residents. You know how much it costs if you can find a qualified pruner? Because the city's expanded its contracts with companies and try to get somebody to do it. And when they do come, like just to do a good pruning of a 100-year-old elm tree, for example, it's like $6,000. So you're gonna force people to order them to do it? Like, where's the $6,000 come from?
The debate will take place.
Okay, I'm just saying,
that's right.
I'm just saying.
The only comments I just had,
saying.
and I did ask you offline
Saying.
for full transparency, could you just explain the consultation piece with potentially the public who will be affected by this?
Yeah.
And the private sector who also developers, let's be honest here, who have large swaths of land that are potentially covered by trees. Councillor Wyatt gave one. I have several in Charleswood and across the city. There are other areas. What consultation will take place in the next 300 days?
So what we're doing in the next 300 days is creating doing our internal consultation and bringing forward a bylaw, private and public tree bylaw to this committee. Our recommendation, that report is going to be to open it up to public consultation at that point in time where you folks can first have a first look, a first go at it, to give us your comments, of course, and then our thoughts would be to go to public consultation after that point in time.
All right, well, I look forward.
So we're talking, just so everybody knows, because of the prorogue, you're talking this, we're not gonna see the light of day of this report until September, October of 2025.
Be a great election platform.
Well, I'm just wondering, like, I don't know why this, if it's being done in other cities, they got bylaws in place, why does it take so long?
Well, I've tried to explain that, Counselor. I can repeat it if you like.
No, I heard you, Dave, but I'm just curious. If they've got it elsewhere, just copy what works.
But you gotta amend other.
The lawyers, have got
Doesn't work.
lawyers.
Those are bylaws.
I think we got lawyers on
Consultations and
staff. They
update.
might not be able to do work.
The request here.
Anyway, I'll move the request for 300
The
days.
request is up to
Up to
300
300
days.
yeah.
Now, the other thing I want to ask, is this taking into consideration funding options as part of it? I.e. for land assembly, is that part of this?
No,
That's too bad.
All right,
Okay,
This is
motion.
for privately owned stuff.
that's what I mean.
I moved the 300,
The
up
public
to
service
300.
recommendation. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hey.
Opposed? Councilor Wyatt, would you like to be recorded in opposition?
That one is soon.
Counselor,
I'm in a rush.
That was a yes, and recorded.
he said nay.
Okay.
Do you want to be recorded as?
Moving on, he didn't answer, I'll take it as a no. Number 6, creation of capital projects, consolidation of capital budgets and acceptance of grants, report 2.
I believe that I have Shauna Prosiak online here for this, if there are any questions, but this should be a fairly straightforward report.
Yes, straightforward.
Yeah, that council approval is of course required for establishment of capital projects and acceptance of grants for these 5 projects. And I'd open it up to questions.
All right.
Sure.
There's one thing missing. I saw in the clause 9. So below that, you said any surplus funds be returned to the Old Caledonia Ward Land Education Reserve. And then the one before that is regarding one in my ward. It says any surplus funds be returned to the Transco Ward Parks and Recreation Enhancement Program. But there's also funds with the LDR, and I don't know why it didn't also say and surplus funds in the LDR can be returned as well. And it's missing that.
That would be a question for Ms. Prosick if she's online. All right.
I am.
Good afternoon. Here we go.
Did you hear that, Shauna?
I did.
Good show.
So, hi. So what happens is surplus funds, there likely won't be a lot. So that's why we had it going into one specific account. Would you because
I just want to
otherwise,
if there's surplus funds in the LDR, goes back to the LDR. If the surplus funds in the prep, goes back to the prep type of thing.
right. But it all is consolidated into one account. So the surplus fund, what we could do is the percentage of the LDR surplus funds goes back to LDR, and the percentage of prep surplus funds go into prep.
Sure.
That we want to do.
Sure. That makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have a question here from Councillor Edie.
Just a follow-up question. Not directly related to this, but, so the prep fund still exists, right? Joanna?
Yeah, well, the prep funds are consolidated into one account. Or the prep funds exist currently for all wards, is that what you're asking?
Well, so after the budget, was the prep money all consolidated into only one account for all of the city, or there was ward accounts, right, for the prep?
That's correct. And that's still the way it is, yeah.
Still is, eh?
Yeah.
Are you still expected to report on that, Shauna?
We don't typically report on the prep funds, but we meet with councillors to go over their funds for their ward.
So your section or division or branch is, I guess, really overloaded at the moment?
There's a lot going on with all of the grant funding we've received, yes. But it's great. We're getting lots of projects done, so that's excellent.
Okay, all right, thanks.
I had one other question. The arts, culture, and sport in community grant. That's the provincial grant, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, what's frustrating about that? Is there any way from a staff to staff level at the province? Because right now, like for the project that you refer to here, the Parc La Jamodier, I'm having to tie up $90,000 of my LDR to finance their grant because they don't want to just simply issue the grant to the community group. I have to be the bank. The city has to be the bank for the province, which is ridiculous. They could just simply, by order of council, issue the money, and like we do with our funds, and then we don't tie up our own money, which is what we have. I know other councils are having to do the same. So I believe so, at least.
No, I had to do that too for this number, Northwoods Community Center plan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
I can provide if you're okay, I can provide a clarification on that. Actually, so the grant gives up to 80% of the funds before the project's complete. So it's only the last 20% that has to be financed. However, we cannot actually award a project until council approves this report. So the report process for council to approve a project takes approximately 4 months before it goes through all of the committees. So therefore, if we want to complete a project quickly, we need to move forward with other funds that are in the bank, because we can't award a project until the council has approved us to accept the funds from the community group that has received the grant.
It has always been like that.
Yes. As far as I'm concerned, it's been like that for years. Since I've started.
We delegated authority to you guys to do this, not have this report come back, because this is really a housekeeping. The way I read this report is housekeeping. You're consolidating accounts, you bring it under for different projects. That's what we do. The counselors work with you guys to do that. They kind of already know the back channel or the behind the scenes dialogue in terms of where the different funds are coming from. If the public service had the authority to do that, then you wouldn't have a 4-month delay.
That's correct.
Something to think about. Okay, I'll move the report, Mr. Chairperson, with that one little change.
Counselor Wyatt moves the Winnipeg Public Service recommendation.
As amended.
Sorry.
With the amendment to add and the Transcona Ward Land Education account.
Yeah, in the end of 9, basically what Shauna said.
Okay.
Yeah.
As amended, all in favor?
Right.
Opposed? It's carried.
Thank you, Shauna.
Moving on to item number 7, which is naturalization of city boulevards with pollinator-friendly plant species. Mr. Gompton.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. As Councillor White had mentioned earlier, we've done quite a bit of work with regards to reporting to both Public Works and Community Services, to be honest with you. Groups, the 2 most recent reports was one, use of clover instead of grass on public land that went to Public Works, and Public Works maintenance and natural and green space on Fermor Avenue, which went to this committee, Community Services. The first one was in April 2023. The second was in February 2024. Essentially, both these reports talk about the 4 or 5 different pilot projects that we have going on in the city right now with different work. We've done naturalization for the last 30, 40 years, so nothing is really new. We are always looking for new products, ways to enhance pollination, naturalization. It's nothing new to us, but at the end of the day, the last report kind of wraps it up for us about where we are, where we're going, and that's the Fermor Avenue. In Fermor, we actually did a bit of a study to see. We did some naturalization in existing turf, planting plugs in it. And we tried to get some sense of the costing, if there'd be any cost or savings of maintenance with regards to that. At the end of the day, what we found out that in essence, there needs to be a capital cost infusion in order to get into naturalization. So we need upfront money to naturalize further, which is one of the biggest challenges. And that report at the end of the day says that we wanted according to our park strategy, and this is listed in our park strategies, one of our initiatives is to hire a habitat restoration technician, which was not funded in the last budget. However, there was a capital budget for restoration from 26 to 29 in the neighborhood of about $200,000 per year. So I guess my response to the pilot project is that we're sort of past that pilot project stage, and we're looking forward to the capital funding that's at least got preliminary approval in 2026 to 2028. And I think we can really get going with this program as we move forward. We all love pollinators, but I don't think another pilot project or report is necessary.
Okay. Councillor Eady.
This pilot that you said you're ready to roll forward, it's over, turned out pretty good, I guess, but now this is on like boulevard or streets, whatever space that the city's responsible for cutting. Is that correct? Versus in the residential neighborhood, the responsibility lies on the resident in front of that boulevard, right?
Yes, and just to clarify that idea, almost all of the boulevards are mowed by residences that are out there right now. Most of the boulevards that we deal with are on P1s and P2s, those busier, those Spectre and other streets. most of those, we do have a naturalization project going on one of those, but mostly with the salt damage that we get, we are unable to grow much. We can't even grow regular turf on those boulevards, so naturalization is a challenge. So what happens, we install turf brand new, and eventually the weeds come in, and you'll see more dandelions, you'll see silverweed, you'll see knotweed, you'll see all these things that come in over time. So, and it's a really good question, Counselor, because at the end of the day, residential boulevards, if people want to do some naturalization in their own front yard, they can do that under the non-standard boulevard treatment without a permit, as long as they follow our regulations. All they have to,
It doesn't grow too high, right?
and it can't be over a meter, and it has to be a certain size, and it can't have noxious weeds in it, blah, 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 and they have to take care of it. So the opportunity is out there right now for people in their own residential areas.
But does that include, because when I think about naturalization, they're much taller than that, than what is currently in the bylaw, the residential boulevard, the one that you just talked about.
So the non-standard boulevard
Yeah.
treatment says up to a meter.
Up to a meter? Oh, a meter. How tall is a meter? 3 feet? Okay.
Yeah, a little over.
39 inches, I think.
Yeah, that's right. A little over 3
inches. All right. Sorry, we had a mover there.
I'll move it.
Councilor Wise moves. Receive this information. Thank you very much. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's carried. Item number 8. Dutch elm disease control update. Mr. Johnson again?
Yes, if possible, I'd like to wrap in number 8 and 9 together. So the comprehensive urban forestry strategy was passed in December 2023. We didn't get a budget passed till March 2024. So asking us for a report is fairly preliminary, a written report, when we have just only 2 months have started.
Time to need, Dave.
Well, if we want to prioritize those bylaws, it would be longer than the bylaws, to be honest with you. So what I would say is 2 choices. One of those is that the report or strategy that was approved said that we're going to come back to this committee every 2 years with a report on how it's doing. So one option for you folks is to wait till 2026, I believe, and bring a report forward in that. If that's too long for you, we could bring the city forester to our next meeting to give a verbal report on where things are at.
Or we can hybrid it and meet you in the middle of 2025. I guess where I'm going with this, the first one, Dutch elm disease, is like what I'm seeing out there is I'm worried we're really losing the battle. We are.
Well, I can give you some stats right now if you like.
No, I like it.
Well, where we're-
I like everything in writing. For God, I trust all of this, pay cash.
Okay.
And just on that, Dave,
Committee's a choice.
just on that, Dave, how many private trees have you killed? Sort of, just kidding. So you can report how many Dutch elm disease trees you've taken off of private property and off of public property is 2 different.
Yeah, well, what I can report now, if you're interested, is that, we've had a 5-year average of over 8,000 trees per year come down from public and private property. In 2024, that number reduced to 6,000 trees per year. So the numbers of trees have been reduced over the last year. In 2024, we're only starting marking them right now, so we don't even know what the year-end number would be.
But does that mean we're winning the battle? If you look at a 10-year time frame, last 10 years, what does that look like?
We're doing less bad. Maybe is a different way to look at it. We're always going to lose trees to Dutch elm disease.
No, I know that, Dave, but I'm asking you, are we going this way or are we going that way?
Well, average of 8,000 trees per year over the last 5 years, and this year is 6,000. So I can't project what it's going to be this year quite yet. So it did get better in 2023 compared to the previous years.
But can I ask a question on that, please? So there's actually for a long time, more than just over 5 years, 8,000 a year, like if you go back further, like there's probably not that, that number's probably going down because there's not as many elms around anymore, right? That are susceptible to DED.
The total number of elms is going down. Certainly the strategy, the forest strategy, if you look at it, has a nice little graph in there that talks about what the future is going to look like, depending if you have intervention or don't have intervention, running the program that we have or don't run the program that we have. Okay. So it depends how far into the future we run this program. We'll keep more elm trees longer if we run the program.
Right, okay. And that's what you're gonna report on. Supposedly,
Yes, we report on the entire strategy, which talks about a whole bunch of key indicators, such as removal replacement value, the canopy cover, where our policy position is at. The strategy talks about having a private and public tree bylaw, by the way, too. So we report, altogether, there's about 109 different action items in the strategy, and we'll be reporting on those that are completed or are well on their way.
What did we approve in terms of the funding that kicked in March you referred to?
Yeah, so there will be an increase of, I believe the figure is about $16 million combined operating and capital funding over the next 4 years, increasing slightly every year as we gear up towards, we can't just turn on tree maintenance without a lot of development of contractors and our own staff, as well as tree planting. There's not enough trees to plant. So we've built this strategy to accommodate it as we grow over time.
I guess what I'm looking for is, based on the fact that we're spending that kind of money over 4 years, just some accountability from the public service. Give us an update following a year after the money's flowing, kind of an interim report, if you like, prior to the 2026 report. Just to say, this is how it's going, this is how it's coming along. I don't think that's a lot to ask, considering the money that we've given as a council.
I will defer that for the chair.
No, other councilors do this question. I don't think it's a lot to ask.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. What would you be?
2020 midterm, 2025. Okay, you got the budget of March of 2024. So the benefit of the doubt would be June of 2025. And then from report. Sure. On items 8, so they're all tied together, you said, 8, 9, 9.
Let's sort this out here, what the ask is from Councillor Wyatt.
Report on the status of the.
Item 8 and item 9 you wish to speak to together here. That's what your request.
Yeah, that was my request. It's part of the strategy.
Yeah, part of the strategy, yeah.
Yeah, they're not so.
Both of you report back in June 2025 to the standing committee?
Written report.
That's the assumption unless it says verbal.
So just a follow-up question, 2025. I can't remember, but I believe you have now Dave, your forestry has an extensive database that was developed for trees. Is that correct?
Oh yeah, we know our inventory of the street trees right across the city. That's the only way that we could really put a decent strategy together. You have to know what you have before you can manage it.
Right, so we update that data all the time, right?
We update that data. We also provide annual updates in the service-based budget to what we're performing.
Right, okay, so it's not that difficult to come up with a report with on some of the issues. Okay. Thanks. I agree with the motion. Councillor Wyatt's moved the motion.
So I'm moving to move the motion to suspend the rules to deal with 8 and 9 together.
8 and 9 together would be, should we just jump through them here?
There's still going to be, we can make the same motion, but I'm still going to reflect the decision individually.
Okay, well, let's start with item number 8 then. Dutch elm disease control. Councillor Wyatt moves the amendment of report back to the SPC on CS in June 2025.
And you could put this in there, included in the strategic plan, whatever, couldn't you say that?
Well, in the context of.
Yeah, it just, anyway, okay. Okay, no matter. Don't move it.
Okay, so moved. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And that is carried as worded by Councilor Wyatt.
And the same thing with item 9.
Item number 9.
Report, June 2025.
So this would be the committee recommendation that's being moved here. And
I'm gonna delete no later than the September meeting of standing committee and replace with June 2025.
okay. And that's Councilor Wyatt's intention. Call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And that is carried. We're now on to item number 10, the Green Space Master Plan update.
Just in the interest of time, we got a verbal briefing by Sean and her group. I want to say it was a year ago, spring. It's been a while. Is it possible just to get an update from them this fall, verbally, to the committee, versus written on the Green Space?
May I comment?
Please.
Yeah, we've talked, this item we feel should be part of, Standing Policy Committee of Planning and Development. Sean and I have had discussions. The reason for that is it's born out of our Winnipeg and complete communities, which are led by PPD. The funding is there. And the scope of the study is, we have a park strategy, but it's much more than park strategy, right? Beyond my authority and responsibility, it goes into golf courses, water and waste property, and potentially private property too. So
Talks about land acquisition as well, which is P&D, right?
all land acquisition goes through PPD.
Yeah.
So that's, and it's the will of this committee, Councilor Wyatt, of course, but that's
Cross
our.
jurisdictional though, right? But your staff are not P and D. Like Sean is Public Works.
No,
right?
she's P&D.
She's P and D now?
Yes.
That's been for a long time.
So I want a clarification on this. I did receive correspondence prior to the meeting indicating that it's the opinion of the department that this is property and development. Can I get clarification?
Why do we have a briefing here last time? Was it here or Public Works?
I don't recall a briefing.
Yeah, there was.
I'll ask for the clerk to give
Parks
clarification.
and open spaces, which the Green Space Master Plan is part of, it falls under this committee's jurisdiction. So no matter which department has authority over certain pieces of it, it falls under the committee's jurisdiction. It's not necessarily department to department reporting perspectives.
So this is jurisdictionally correct.
Yes.
Okay. That verbal update would be nice in October. I do.
That would be fine. Yeah.
Not a written update, just a verbal.
Okay, so Councilor Wyatt's requesting a verbal update on the Green Space.
I want to bring lots of pictures.
On October, just for clarification.
It's out for tender now, so there probably won't be a big,
Yeah, okay.
October 24th.
Aye.
Okay, call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
It's exciting because it's tied into your motion,
That is,
the tree thing.
our final item on our regular agenda today is item number 11. City
Keeps
tree
moving these
removal
motions.
on public boulevard, subject to ward council
You asked for this.
approval. Would we like to hear from the mover or the department first? I'm interested in both.
Tell us how it
We'll
looks.
start with the traditional way of going about. I'll hear from the department on item number 11.
And also how it currently works.
So here, I mean, to save some time, our thoughts are to refer this to number 5, tree protection on city property, the bylaws. Because at the end of the day, the authorities will be determined through public and private tree bylaws, the decisions related to those. So our thought would be to, that outcome of the bylaws is going to give the authority and responsibility for removal of public boulevard trees.
No, we already have authority. Our bylaw gives us authority to remove boulevard trees.
Can you
Councilor-
please explain how it works right now?
Councilor-
It's just,
Yeah, okay. Please. With the chair's agreement, I'll try and give a nutshell. There's about 98% of the boulevard tree removals at present are the responsibility of the public service. They're like DED trees, they're trees about to fall over. They're hazardous trees, et cetera, et cetera. I would say, and I'm just sort of surmising, 2% of every 9%, we get requests from the public to remove the trees in front of their house. Presently we will go and assess those and then make a decision of whether they should be removed or not. Now, if they're going to be removed or saved, really, we copy the councillor in that decision and let them know of that decision. I think what Councillor Wyatt has been referring to is that he sees that the councillor needs to sign off. And historically, I don't know, even before my time, which is a while ago, there may have been a sign off. I can't even verify that to be absolutely sure. But the other information we're getting is the City of Winnipeg Charter does not require that a councillor would sign off on a boulevard tree to be removed. It's again, it's a matter of the public service. So, from my perspective, we will continue to inform the city councillor. There was a policy called C222 tree removal policy. It's not in place anymore. We've been following the spirit of that, which follows this process where we involve the councillor, where we allow people to call in and let us know if they want their tree removed. And then, so that kind of in a nutshell wraps up what the existing process is.
Can I ask just a specific question? I've had requests and they talk to me, and there's nothing preventing the councillor from advocating for or against taking down that tree, right?
Unless it's already been taken down.
Well, no, I have an example of where a huge tree, I think it's in Elm, a huge tree is so close to the sidewalk and the sidewalk, whatever, and the tree root system is pushing the basement wall of a particular property. And they asked to have it taken down. And anyway, I advocated for it because I went down there, checked out the situation. So I advocated for it, but the public service still decided not to take it down. So.
The science of tree roots pushing walls down is false. That there's a common belief that
don't do that.
They don't do that. No,
they don't.
Yes.
So why do I get? Anyway,
this is
I don't want to debate it here. I'm not going to debate it here.
I'm
not going to debate it here, but
I guess. But there's nothing wrong with the councillor advocating either. We listen to everyone at the end of the day, and of course, we might listen we might shine the light a little brighter to when the councillors are talking to us. Obviously, however, we have to take a science-based approach to removal.
The biggest thing so first of all, I know it's not a charter issue because we used to have the authority. We used to be asked to sign off. And I know the charter was not changed to remove that. So charter, it basically says the city of Winnipeg shall be responsible for trees in its boulevard, period. And so how we decide policy-wise, procedure-wise, that's up to us. Charter is silent on it. But that's why we had a policy years ago where the councillor signed up. The biggest reason I think why it must have come about is my guess is that so often a tree is then removed. Quite often it's a large mature tree in a large older neighborhood. And then we don't know when the tree coming back to replace it will come, right? And, that's the biggest thing, concern that I have is that these trees come down and then there's no plan for replacement, or we're told, well, the replacement is 5 years away, councillor. And by the way, when it was in place, councillors I didn't hear of any issues where they said, do not cut this. Most of the time, 99% of the time, the councillor signed off based on what they're part of. But it gave some predictability on boulevard tree management, I guess you call it. That's all. So that's the thing. Yeah.
If I could respond.
Yeah.
You know, we share your wanting to get the trees replaced. I think that's important. And if I look at my time here in the city of Winnipeg, it has been sometimes 5 years because of the funding that we've had. Fortunately, we're in a good period now where we're planting 6,500 trees. Our target is 6,500 trees this year. I'm seeing a real difference out there over the last couple of years. And hopefully we'll have shorter time periods.
You just want something to turn to residents or businesses, right, when they lose the tree in front. Sometimes they have a patio or a resident has, you know, they have memories with that tree, you know, absolutely, yeah, and so. Anyway, these are just my thoughts, Mr. Chairman. I'll move that we receive this information.
So moved by Councilor White to receive this information. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And that is carried.
I'll move adjournment.
And just before adjournment, I just wanted to publicly thank Parks for their support and involvement in the Winnipeg 150 in the ward in Charles Tuxedo Westwood. It was a resounding success and they were a big part of it. So thank you, Mr. Domke and your team. So moved.
Any will to move suspension of the rules to reopen Happy Land for the summer?
I am not supportive of that at this point in time.
Have you had discussions with the mayor about the issue?
Pardon me?
Have you had any discussion with the mayor about the issue?
About?
The issue of the closure of Happy Land?
I have not had any conversations since the council decision was made.
Yeah, good, thanks.
And sorry, who moved to
I
adjourn?
thought I'd put my total water and see what the temperature was.
Councilor Wyatt.
Councilor Wyatt moves adjournment. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And that is carried. Thank you very much. And I hope everyone enjoys their summer.